Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world, whenever you are listening to D. Grant Smith and Ray Gage on All Angles Asked. This is, I believe, our sixth episode already.
Correcto.
And even though we've only had six episodes, or five so far, this will be six. I feel like every episode that we have, we could probably take it apart and do another probably 15 or 20 just from each one of those
hmm
episodes. The fun of this to me partially is just having that big picture. When we explore a topic, we go all in on the topic. We haven't had a single episode yet that was, I think, less than 57 minutes. So it's long for a podcast. I think anytime you're exploring the subjects that we're exploring with the way that we're asking the questions that we're asking, you have to be prepared for a longer conversation. And that's okay.
No, that's preferable.
It's preferable for someone who is exploring and somebody who is looking for answers, somebody who is wanting to learn, somebody who is asking questions that they weren't allowed to ask before.
Mm. Or
Kind of
might
a,
not have even considered like that there were questions around that subject.
right. And kind of like what we were just talking about before we jumped on and hit record is that we're not taught. Like we're naturally curious. You and I did a workshop a few months back on
hmm
curiosity, and it was fantastic. And it's still available out there for people if they're interested. They just have to reach out to one of us to get the link for it. The the state that I'm born in is curious.
Mm.
I need to learn about the world surrounding me, and questions are a natural way, or curiosity is a natural way for that to happen. Unfortunately, it seems, and you can speak from your experience about this directly in what you're seeing with working with kids in
Mm.
school, is that it's come to the point where, and even I remember it from when I was growing up, and I'm a little bit older than you, but I'm also quite a bit younger than a lot of other people, so that's okay. But I remember the curiosity was something that you have, but it's also then something that becomes almost like a burden to you to have
Mm.
because the the adults in your life, quote unquote, or the teachers or the parents or the pastors and the Sunday school teachers, whatever those the bosses, whatever those people look like, they don't encourage that
Mm.
curiosity. As a matter of fact, they discourage it. Don't ask questions, just do what you're told.
Ooh, yeah.
So, and what you were talking about a little bit ago was a perfect example of that. If you want to kind of reiterate what
Yeah.
you were discussing.
So I will do that. Before I do that, I want to kind of storytelling is a huge part of my life and a huge part of what I do. So I want to kind of, as you were describing, like growing up, curiosity is kind of frowned upon. It's interesting when we are toddlers, before we have verbal language, we are picking up everything we can. We're holding it in our hands, we're squeezing it, we're grabbing onto it, and most of the time we're trying to put it in our mouths because putting it inside of us is how we understand things. We're naturally curious, and our parents are like, no, 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 don't put that in your mouth. No, no, don't grab that thing. Don't do. And for rightfully so, like toxins and other things. You don't want to just you don't want to eat crayons. That's probably not all that healthy. But like there is something about us naturally wanting to have a physical experience with something so that we feel like we understand it or we know it on a deeper level, or it's not a strange thing, it's not a foreign thing, it's not something that is unwelcome to us. Now we have some sort of relationship with it. So that was a thought that popped into my head as you were describing kind of like our upbringing. But then I had two other thoughts, and that is did, did you read or ever see the cartoon Curious George?
Oh, love Curious George, man. My youngest grandson just can't get enough of Curious George.
Oh, so Curious George is still around. That's good to know. So when I was a little kid, I watched Curious George, but it seemed like little George the monkey, he's moving around, he's doing all kinds of stuff, and I don't remember the name of the park ranger or whatever the guy's name was that would like walk around or have to go out and find him. But it
The man
almost
in the
seemed
yellow hat.
the man in the yellow hat. Okay. So I remember at different points like thinking to myself, man, George is just kind of like he's kind of all over the place. Like he's kind of hard to keep up with, and if I did the things that George did, I would get in a lot of trouble. And so I appreciate that the stories seem to be kind of pointing to like, hey, here's a curious little monkey and what is it like to be in his shoes? But depending on your upbringing, that could also look to you like, oh, well, if I tried to mimic that, that would not be good for me. So I'm gonna do what you just said. I'm gonna follow the rules and stay in line. And the other thought I had of other curious creatures is um, being curious like a cat. And if you've ever owned a cat, you know the cats are naturally curious. And usually, when they're curious about something, they're doing something that involves like getting into something you don't want them to get into, or stirring up something you don't want to be stirred up, or there's going to be some sort of mess that gets made and then you have to go clean up. And so, that kind of curiosity in both of these instances can lead us into thinking, oh, well, when people talk about being curious, it seems like something that might be fun, but it also seems like something that might get me in trouble. And so it's like curiosity is frowned upon. And it's not until, and I was a pretty straight-laced, by the books, follow the rules kind of dude that was afraid of authority figures and didn't want to step out of line. I don't know about you, Ray. I don't know if you were like a wild, child that was wreaking havoc across the lands for your parents. You don't come across as that person, but was that your story, or were you more by the book?
Oh, I was by the book. Now I had some unique experiences but they weren't caused by me being uh, rebellious or whatever word you want to attach to it. They were more about me being curious.
Mm.
So that got me into some trouble, but it was never anything that was like, ill intent. Like, I'm just a troublemaker kind of a thing.
So I think my interpretation and understanding, based on my experience of observation of other people and my own experience in my own life, is that we're not, and I think this is part of the reason why you and I get together and record these conversations and put them out for people to experience, to approach things from different angles, is we're not really taught how to ask questions or how to ask something other than the surface level question. Because what you were referencing a minute ago, my experience working with young people, there's two different ways I'm working with kids nowadays. I'm doing some substitute teaching slash tutoring. My wife calls them the same thing. She calls the substituting work. She's like, well, when you're doing the local tutoring, I'm like, ah, it's the same thing. Okay. But I'm also doing some mentoring with young kids and high school age guys, and just being a safe space for them to open up and share and talk with. And as me being a storyteller, one of the kids I'm working with he's a young storyteller and he's dynamic, and so getting to have storytelling conversations has been wonderful. But here's where the crux of it all. In the substitute teaching stuff that I've been doing, brief story. I did a U.S. history class. There was an advanced U.S. history class. There was a second part of it, and then there was a regular U.S. history class. And they were supposed to, both of these classes, the teacher was out. They were supposed to watch this video, 20 minutes, do this worksheet, turn it in, and then they could, talk amongst themselves quietly. So they watched the video, they bring their worksheet in, and it was all about the Constitution. And the last question, after they do this word find, word search thing, the last question says, how has the Constitution impacted your life? And they spit out, for the most part, these very generic answers that I don't even think they understood what the answer was. It was just words that they'd seen in a book. And so, for the most part, the same generic answers was, it protects my rights. So I'm seeing this and I'm going, well, what rights are they talking about? And do they know what their rights are? Like, they've done all this stuff, but like in Texas, students are basically taught around the STAR test. I don't know if it's true in Indiana, or if there's other names for the test, but like there's a whole thing in schools now about like, do is teaching to the test, the state mandated test, is that the best way to educate our kids? Or can we go back to a place, I guess, before No Child Left Behind in the George W. Bush era, where we were teaching kids something other than just how to pass this one test? But what I'm noticing is that learning about certain things and just learning book noted answers doesn't actually teach anything. You're helping somebody memorize something to pass a test, but nothing's sinking in past the surface level. So I would ask the kids, like, okay, well, tell me about this thing that you just learned. You just spent 20 minutes on this. You just read all this stuff. You just answered all these questions. Why does this matter? So then I started asking, well, why does learning about the Constitution make a difference in your life? Uh, and some of the kids would just look around and shake their heads, and other kids were like, "No, that's a great question. I hadn't thought about that." I'm like, you live in this country, you're learning this stuff. Why does this matter? And why are you learning it? Why is it significant for you? What difference does it make that there's this gigantic long document that has all of your rights in it and that is talked about at length all the time? Like, what difference does that make? What is the purpose of all this stuff? And for some of the students, they actually started leaning in and engaging and having conversation. And I'm not their actual teacher. I can't give them a pass or fail grade. I'm just asking questions. I'm just being curious. But I don't think that they're used to somebody actually engaging with them below the surface level of why this matters. And I think that there's a huge part of education that doesn't approach the why does this matter? Why are we learning this? I'm pretty sure you probably asked questions similar to that when you were in school. I know that I did. And for the most part, the teachers and my parents were like, you have to learn this so you can move to the next grade. I'm like, but why does it matter? Where am I ever going to actually use this stuff in my regular life? And I testified when I was in eighth grade that I was never going to need to know how to do geometry. And I was wrong because I've done home remodeling projects. And if they would have told me, you're going to need to do this for the home remodeling projects that you might do, I probably would have paid closer attention. I've never had to use pre-calculus. Never. I did excellent in that class because I had a really engaging teacher, but that's a subject that, like, if I didn't have a great teacher, it wouldn't have made a difference. And so I'm saying all this to say that I think that there is to our core self a desire to want to know why anything matters, but we're not encouraged to explore the why. We're not encouraged to explore something below the surface level. But when we do, when we're encouraged to, or when somebody else engages with us in that, our hearts like are magnetized towards that because there's something deep within us that wants to know.
It is interesting because you have the, I think we talked about this in one other episode. Maybe it wasn't an episode. Maybe it was just a conversation when we were talking about the American education system, especially the kindergarten through 12th grade, and the way that it's structured now compared to the way that it was structured pre-industrial revolution,
Mm,
and how the classrooms were set up differently and one teacher for all grades, and that compared to what we have now. And we talked about, I believe we talked a little bit about Henry Ford and how
hmm
his influence came into
John
play.
D. Rockefeller. Yeah.
Right, John D. Rockefeller. And I was having a conversation with my son recently. So he's 19 and he's a freshman in college, and he lives at home. He's going to a college that's close to home. And I asked him how he was feeling about college, because college is different than high school is. He
hmm
said, "Oh, I'm really loving it." I said, "Oh, cool. So what is it about it that's different that you're loving it?" He said, I feel like I'm actually being allowed to think for myself."
Mm.
So that's a really interesting observation. Can you please explain that a little more deeply to me? And he says, "Well, Dad, the American education system was originally set up as for people to learn how to work in meat processing plants. because that, setting you in rows, giving you a time that you have to be there and a time that you can't leave until that's over with. You have a structured lunch, you have structured breaks, you have recreation put in. He said even the grading system is how you grade meat.
Whoa. Whoa. I had not even thought of, whoa.
And that was exactly my reaction. I was like, that is actually really deep and profound.
Dude, what's your son's name?
Luke.
Please tell Luke a very big thank you because that is immensely we could spend a long time just digging into that.
Exactly. And I thought, and it was kind of on the heels of us having talked about the influence of Henry Ford, the influence
Mm,
of John D. Rockefeller. But I had never heard which I had heard some of that before, but I had never heard the meat packing plant reference before, and how deeply that's ingrained to this day. Like, what really has changed in class structure
mm,
or grading structure
mm,
since it was implemented, 100 and some years ago? And that we first started to transition over from the way we used to do it to the way that we're doing it
mm,
now. And we're still doing it that way. How many people in this world go to work in meatpacking plants
mm.
as a percentage of the
Yeah.
population? Yet we are teaching everyone how to go to work in a meatpacking plant, basically. It's just, you don't have to think for yourself in the meatpacking plant. You just have to do what you're told and know how to grade the meat.
Yeah, so I knew that John Rockefeller talked about how he wanted to have a regimented workforce for his factories. I didn't, re and I think the yeah, meat processing is one thing at that. I didn't realize how influential that had been in the grading system. That makes perfect sense now, though. But like you have exactly what you just described. You have the assembly line industrial revolution, like series of machines and buildings that have these machines in them, and each building produces a different like output thing. But if you can work in this factory, if you can work in factory A, you can also work in factory B and factory C and factory D, and like it's you're an automaton, and you need to be able to read instructions, follow directions, um, stay in line, not ask questions, unless the question has to do with something that is a problem within the system that hasn't been addressed before. Like, the every time we plug this in, it shorts the fuse out. Okay, well that's a problem. Thank you for pointing that out. Please get back in line and do your job. But in 2025, and this has been the case for a long time, uh, we still have factories, but they're pretty much automated. Most of us that work, one of the only places where there's like consistent, steady work that involves people actually going and doing things would be maybe construction, but also like food service. But still, those are somewhat nuanced. So you can go to school and get whatever grade you get, but like that doesn't mean that you have the capacity now to be able to go work at Chili's. Hopefully you can, but it's not the same thing.
There's a reason why a lot of young people's first job is fast food. They can do
Hmm.
that. It's regimented. It's a system and a process that they have to follow. There's not three ways to fry fries at McDonald's. There's only one. I don't need to ask questions to have that job.
Mm,
That you teach me how to do the job, and I should know how to do the job, right? You follow the steps. There's a card, maybe a laminated
mm,
card that says, this is how we do the fries. This is how we put the burger together. This is the Whopper is put together the same way every time, unless you ask for no pickles, for example.
mm,
So it's the same kind of structure that so many of the younger people work in those places. So that they don't want to work in those places the rest of their life, but we're not teaching them different skills than we did before. When I think about the teachers, and you can tell me if this is true for you, when I think about the teachers that had the most impact for me when I was in school,
hmm
and I hadn't thought about this until we're just having this conversation, so it's interesting. When I think about why those teachers had an impact, it's because they encourage that exploration aspect within their
mm,
classroom.
mm, hmm. Were there other dynamics though?
Well, there probably were, but if you think about it, they were likable. But why were they likable? They were approachable. Why were they approachable? I mean, I'm not going to remember the jerks so much.
Yeah.
If I do, I'm going to remember them because they were jerks. I'm not going to remember them fondly. Right? So the ones that I remember fondly are the ones that engaged with me and tried to engage with other students.
Mm,
So there's other dynamics, but I don't think that those dynamics are unrelated. I think they're all related to one another.
mm. So I'm immediately thinking of two teachers, one from college and one from when I was in high school. And I'll admit, in high school I didn't pay very close attention. There were things there were things I was naturally good at that I did all right, and then math in particular was something I was not naturally good at. And so um I got curious as to how I could get away with not doing math, and that got me in trouble a couple times. But the one teacher that stands out to me as a teacher that really made a massive difference in my life, and this isn't a course that I was terrible at to begin with, but I got an A in his class. It was pre-calculus, 11th grade. Mr. Causey was my teacher, and here's Mr. Causey didn't really like I guess in a way, if I think about it, maybe he was encouraging me to be curious. But what he did was similar to what Dr. Weathers did when I was in, he was a English professor. And I'm a writer now, but I was not an English major. I didn't graduate with an English degree. I got to graduate with a degree in mass communications from working in radio and stuff. But all that to say, both of these guys, um, they were great storytellers, and they were for me it was they were passionate about what it was that they were teaching. And I think that's something else that I'm noticing from the substitute teaching job, because I'm not necessarily passionate about the class that I'm in, but I am passionate about those kids, and I am passionate about like really engaging with them. So Mr. Causey had been a police officer in San Diego for 8 years, from 1980 to 1988 or something like that. And so on the first day of class, he looked like Robin Williams from Good Will Hunting. He was
Okay.
kind of tall, broad-shouldered, big, kind of hefty guy with a really big beard. And he was a brand new teacher. I went to a Baptist high school. We were kind of used to sort of like, implementing our way as students on the new teachers that hadn't been around for a while. But from day one, Mr. Causey put us in our place. He stood at the front of the class with his hands behind his back, and he said, when class starts, you will put your backpacks under your table. You will sit down and you will be quiet, and you will pay attention to what it is we're going to do today. And we're like, this guy. And so he said, by the way, I was a police officer in San Diego for 8 years. I've been in 4 shootouts. I've killed 6 people. I'm not afraid of a single one of you little teenage kids at all. If you think that you're going to just come in and implement your little way and do whatever it is that you want, You got another thing coming. You do not scare or intimidate me at all. Not only have I been a police officer, but I've been a football coach for high school for the past 10 years. And he goes off on this list of all these things that were done. We're like, holy crap, this guy's going to be a nightmare to. But after he gives his like real stern little thing, then he jumped right into math. And we were like, what is going on? By the second week, one of our other students had said, "Hey, Mr. Kazi, it would be really great. What if before you start class, what if you tell us one of your cop stories? It'll really help us because we're coming off of lunch. So it'll help us stay engaged with what it is that we're talking about." So we started the class off with a cop story. And then he would teach us math. And I never paid attention to math until Mr. Kazi's pre-calculus class. And I had zero reason to care about math, especially pre-calculus, because I wasn't going to go do anything with advanced calculus. No, no. But I was I was into it. And again, like I went from getting C's and an occasional B minus in algebra and geometry to getting an A in pre-calculus. And then after that, my math scores in every other grade were, or moving forward, were terrible. But like for teachers that impacted my life, I always go back to, because Mr. Causey had a way of just like being super passionate, but also like connecting with us in story. And then the other teacher I mentioned, Dr. Weathers, he was the most chill, laid back guy. Actually, most of the English professors at ACU were pretty chill, pretty laid back, but very, very deep. And Dr. Weathers would just stand at the front of the class and he would say the most outlandish things. And he would talk about like, oh, this guy's writing about just what it's like to, Emerson's really just talking about sitting on a front porch, looking at a pond. How interesting could a pond be? And then he would say something really outlandish. And I don't remember the outlandish things that he said. I would try to write them down because it was hilarious to me. But he would say it and just kind of like see if anybody was paying attention to like how brilliant it was and how outlandish and crazy it was. And then he just move on down the road like it wasn't that big of a deal. And if you were paying attention and you get this to your points, Ray, if you were paying attention and you got curious and then you take notes and you start exploring, now I started reading Walden Pond from a different perspective that I hadn't looked at before because it was just, this is a classic poem I'm supposed to read for this class. But now Dr. Weathers has said this outlandish stuff and it's got me thinking about it in a different way than I had before. So now I am curious. So yeah, you're right. It is, I think it's a combination of passion. I think it's a combination of passion and curiosity.
They opened up a space that allowed your curiosity to move forward. So when like your example of the cop story.
Hmm.
So what did that do? That fed your curiosity. Somebody said, "Hey, you know what
Hmm.
would really help us is if coming back from lunch, you told a story about your experience as a police officer in San Diego for whatever, however many years, whatever that was." And he thinks, that's not a bad idea. Let's see if it works. So he's engaging on a different level, but he's feeding the curiosity that comes
Hmm.
naturally, that's normally pushed down. Somebody said, "Hey, would you help bring our curiosity up?" And his response wasn't, "Oh, that's we don't have time for that. We got to stay on
Hmm.
focus. We got to stay on point. We got to stay on track," which he could easily have done given his original speech.
Hmm.
But instead, he chose to say, "Yes, let's do that and see what happens." So he was curious to see how that would work out and was willing to take a chance to see what would happen. And obviously, it worked out fantastic, or you
Hmm.
wouldn't be talking about it to this day.
Yeah,
But
I'm thinking about it now. I was 16 maybe. That was 27 years ago.
mhm.
Yeah.
And really, when we think about if we're to sit and just rest with it for a little bit and look back over everyone who has had an influence on us in our lives in a way that we view as positive from when we were children, even up till now, like the people that we interact with now, I'm guessing that it's because they encourage or encourage our curiosity, or
Mm,
they allow us to be curious together. The conversations that you have are different conversations. You're not talking about, people as much as you're talking about ideas. You're talking about concepts, figuring out, like, what if the way that I think things work isn't really the way that they do?
mm.
And you can apply that in any
Every area
area.
of life. Yeah.
The conversations that you have with those questions are fun, and that they're exciting.
So that I think is a huge thing. Like, do you remember high school being fun from like a from a curricular standpoint?
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay. What about junior high slash middle school? Do you remember like the school part of that being fun?
Maybe a little bit more fun than high school, but not much.
Okay. So that seems to be across the board, and I would say that's probably still true now. Like, with a few exceptions, most of us had maybe one or two teachers between sixth and 12th grade that were interesting, fun people. What you've just sparked in me is whether it was Mr. Causey's intention or not. I'm pretty sure it was Dr. Weather's intention because he was just that kind of dude. But most teachers and most of the curricular school-based system, once you, I think, get out of like third grade, like fun gets kind of taken out of the experience. And we're not supposed to have fun. This is supposed to either be serious work. Well, it's supposed to be serious work. And it's supposed to be something that we're really just, paying attention to. As though you can't pay attention to something or take something not seriously, but without treating it with like kid gloves and just lightly and remove fun out of it. Like fun is something that can't come with the process. But my grandfather taught me when I was a little kid, if you enjoy what it is that you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And so that doesn't mean that you're not having to do challenging things or that there's not quote unquote hard work that's involved in the process, but your attitude towards it isn't going to be something full of resistance. And I don't know how you can enjoy something and not have fun at the same time. And so if we're able to allow ourselves to see that like part of part of part of what makes part of what makes school or can make school fun is what you were talking about, like curiosity. But it, having that, I think it's kind of like a secret sauce ingredient of like, it's not just asking questions and it's not just like wondering, oh, I wonder what this is about. But it's also like there being this fun energy that's a part of the process and infusing that into everything, it, like totally dynamically transforms the way we do it.
It does. And I think you could actually probably take this conversation about education, and you could put any institution in the same place and come up with basically the same result. That the structure that's put in place is put there for a reason that was intended by the person or the people that put it in place.
Mm,
So we talked about the meat packing, we talked about Rockefeller, we talked about Ford when it comes to the education system, and nothing's really changed since then. Well, what if we turn around and we say, well, then what about religion, for example?
mm. Okay.
And I'm not just picking on religion to pick on religion, but God, do I love, thank you, do I love picking on religion
Yeah.
for
Facts.
almost the same reasons. Like, there's curiosity is not encouraged.
Yeah. Well,
Curiosity is actively discouraged unless the curiosity that you have fits within the box as it was built, which again isn't just a religion thing. It's an education thing. Our political system. It's just throw any institution in there and you have the same structure.
Hmm.
Like we made this box for a reason. You're not supposed to ask questions that bring you outside of the box that we built, or bad things will happen to you.
Hmm. I'm immediately thinking of Legos. And the reason for so that's interesting because the more you're describing things, the more I'm imagining certain things, and it's making me curious because I think at one point, ooh, okay, it's starting to come to me now. At one point in time, Legos were just little blocks that had the little like they fit together, and you built houses or you built cars, but there were no rounded corners. Or you built spaceships when the spaceship Legos came out, like okay, cool. And so at my house, I mixed all of the Legos together. And so when my sister would play, she would play with houses, and my dad now would build spaceships or planes or whatever. And this was really before the year 2000 and some of the other things. But now, like you can, my mother-in-law, she does flowers with Legos and like art things and so I know you can build like the Eiffel Tower and like the you can build detailed cars almost like model cars with Legos and uh every Lego or every Star Wars spaceship and there's all kind you can build like Iron Man like there's all kinds of detail stuff that goes into now because it's advanced but like the reason Legos came into play is when you were saying we built this box for this purpose. And you're not supposed to do this thing unless it's been preordained by us to fit into this thing. And it made me think of, oh, yeah, back in the day when I was playing with Legos, like there was a lot of things I couldn't build because there weren't blocks for it.
There was a lot of things that you could build because you had an imagination, though.
True.
So what I remember is similar. It's like now you want to build a Star Wars spaceship, you go buy the box that has everything in it exactly like you need it to, with the instructions on what goes where next.
Hmm.
They're just taking you back to school. See the curiosity, the creativity,
Oh, yeah, that's true. You couldn't
where you
deviating from the plan.
exactly you're deviating from the plan if you just get a box of Legos and you start building stuff because it's fun. Because I remember
Hmm.
doing that when I was a kid. Like, okay, there wasn't even wheels when they first came out. So you're imagining
Hmm.
that was one of the reasons why I remember building a lot of planes and spaceships because they didn't need wheels.
That's
So
true.
you build a house. A house doesn't need
Hmm.
wheels. There
Hmm.
was so I think about it like that. Then they started coming out with wheels, and they started coming out with other pieces. And then when they realized, oh, some of these kids aren't smart enough to figure this out on their own, so we need to put them all in the same box with instructions on how to put them together. Oh, and while
Hmm.
we're doing that, we can charge a lot more for them. So now you have
Hmm.
Lego
And we can.
stores where it's really difficult to just buy Legos that aren't part of a kit.
I used to think you could get them from like Goodwill. That surely somebody would know. Like, no,
Well, you
if you've
probably
got if
can, but they were probably originally purchased as a kit. And they ended up at
well,
Goodwill because somebody lost the instructions.
or
So,
if you want to just get like a big thing full of Legos, you got to go on eBay and get like a Lego lot.
right. So we're back to okay, let's not encourage the creativity unless it fits within the parameters that we built.
So so I've recently read Bill Bryson's short history of just about everything. I don't know if you've heard of that book or if you've heard of Bill Bryson or not.
I have.
Um, so Bill Bryson is a storyteller, but he's a super curious guy. Actually, I think I might send you this book just to see what you think about. But a short history of just about everything. I don't know how he did all of the research for this. It's pretty exhaustive, but he goes into the history of the universe and what we understand of how the history, how the universe came into being. But he does this great job of kind of highlighting certain key individuals throughout the process. So when he gets to Isaac Newton, there's things that he described about Isaac Newton where I'm like, if I had known this about Isaac Newton, I would have read his biography by now. This guy seems like one of the most fascinating human beings ever. But what I got from this book, he explores everything in the outer universe, and then he brings it back into Earth and explores all kinds of stuff about what we know about science. There's there's still so much though that he's describing where he's like, we're pretty sure this is the way it is, but we haven't actually been able to figure out if this is really the way that it is. And but that you said something that kind of keyed in on that because I was like, okay, with Legos and with building blocks and all this stuff, like, yes, imagination helps us be able to play around with the idea. But if we're really just trying to figure out how to fit things into boxes, it almost seems like there's a, a piece of that that's like really organized and detailed. Then there's this other thing about science that kind of is operating off of this. We don't really know. There's not really there's an organization, but we can't figure out how it works. So it seems like our human minds are trying to have boxes to understand the nature of everything. And then if it doesn't fit into our preconceived organized box, we're like, we don't really know what to do with that. So we're going to call this a theory and then call the theory the reality or the truth or whatever the case may be. Um, but yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is like there is some sort of organization that we need to have for ourselves to be able to have some sort of sense of peace and balance and understanding and some sort of grounding. But there's also this room to explore possibilities. And I think that what you and I are talking about is this interesting sort of juxtaposition where like both worlds can exist at the same time. It's not an either or sort of thing.
The what this as you're talking, what this is reminding me of is, and I'll share there was I think about 2 weeks ago, somebody I'm friends with on Facebook posted and said, "Why is a powerful question?"
Mm,
And I commented and I said, "What if there's a more powerful question than why?"
ooh.
He said, "Why do you think there's a more powerful question?" And my response was an explanation of what I believe the difference is between why and what if, which
Which is.
which is why is an explanation of what I believe based on what I've learned from the past.
Hmm.
So why is more of a past-based question? Like, why do we do things the way that we do? Why does this work like that? So that's a
Hmm.
question based on previous knowledge or experience that someone else has in that situation that can, and then they can tell you why. So if I ask, why does a backhoe do this when you press this lever? Well, unless you've operated a backhoe, you can't explain why. So you
Hmm.
have to use your past experience to explain why.
Hmm.
What if is an expansion, potential expansion of possibility.
Hmm.
So it brings me more into the present. What if there was a better way? So someone says, I say, why? And I get the answer. The answer that I get is the answer that fits inside the box that was built for whatever that question was from
Hmm.
before until now. You people like you and I ask questions that are more like, well, what if there's a different way? What if
Mm.
there's a better way? What if there's a way that makes more sense to me than that?
What happens if we put those two questions together, though?
That they kind of do go together, but usually we stop at why. Most people stop at
Mm.
why. They don't move from what, and I guess I'm assuming what you might be asking, so you'll have to correct me when I'm
Mm.
done. But if I only stay with why and listening to the answer of why, and I never think to myself, then I'm just a robot because I'm just doing the thing the same way,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
and I'm staying inside the box. So like, why do we teach the way that we do in school? Why does this religion teach this about whatever fill in the blank is? And I
Mm.
get the explanation. Oh, okay. Then I just go on living my life with that explanation. I'm still in that same
Mm.
box. I'm not outside of the box. So I think why doesn't get you outside of the box. It's, well, what if gets you outside of the box?
I see what you're saying. To me, why helps you explore the box? What if gets you out of it, and then why can get you to explore outside the box? So why I think is an exploratory opportunity, but are you going to explore the confines of what you know and what makes sense, and or jump outside the box and then see what else is out there?
Now I'm looking at it, why is more of a curiosity than it is a explanation.
Hmm. So when you first said that, I started thinking of Simon Sinek, Start with Why, best-selling, blah 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 book, which is fantastic. After you've begun the process, I think that you've maybe kind of proposed here in a way a sequel to okay, after Why, what next? And what next can be what if or what now?
Yes, that's the start with why is a whole nother conversation.
Hmm.
So there's, and I think I've told you this before. The thing that fascinates me is when I ask people. So many people in the professional world, and when I get up in front of a room and I'm talking to people like public speaking, or they've asked me to come to talk at an event, and a lot of times the why question comes into play. The start with why, or what is your purpose?
Hmm.
And that's really what Start With Why is about. And I'll ask people,
Hmm.
like, how many of you have read the book? And then several hands will go up. How is there anyone here who is not familiar with the concept? Because it's brought up in so many different ways. And I can watch the TED Talk.
Hmm.
I can go to YouTube and I can watch Simon talk about it, and I can get the book. Or I've been to seminars where somebody's tried to infuse the concepts into whatever the topic was that they're speaking about. There's not yet been any room that I've been in where someone didn't raise their hand that they had no knowledge
Hmm.
of Start With Why. So then my next question is if I had to ask you to raise your hand right now, knowing that I was going to call on you if you did, how many of you can raise your hand and tell me your why?
Oh yes, I remember this. Hmm.
And I've not had a room yet with more than three people raising their hand. And sometimes there's 100 or 150 people in the room. Every single one of them raised their hands and said, yes, we're familiar. Yes, we've heard. Yes, we've read the book. Yes, we've heard this, listen to the TED Talk or watch the YouTube videos or been to seminars where people talk about knowing your why. but then only three of you, only one of you, or two of you, or three of you can raise your hand and say what your why is.
Hmm.
What's wrong with this picture?
So I think this tags back into our original subject of education because I'm asking kids from that US history class, eighth grade, I'm asking them, why are you learning this? What difference does it make? And we can be taught, we're taught all kinds of things that we have a very surface level head knowledge of, so we can spit out answers for a test. And then as soon as that's over, we walk away, we don't care about it anymore. It's short-term memory. But it makes no difference. We've planted it in here very short term, but we haven't planted it in here. It's not a part of our internal ecosystem or our concept of self or our ways of living and ways of doing things. Where it really has no purpose other than, okay, I've got to take a test on this subject in 2 weeks, and after that, I don't care about it anymore. So the why, I think, that matters is the why that goes the why that goes beneath the surface level. And I wonder, well, I'm curious of your feelings about this. We've lived in the information age for the past 50 years or so. Um,
Give or
and
take.
it's
Yeah.
we're still heavily in the information age, but so much of the information age is just about like content creation and production and putting all the stuff out. But like, what are we really learning and what are we like grasping and holding on to, or like cultivating and working with, and it being a part of our lives and our operations and the ways that we live, where we're not rushing from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. Like, where in this process of learning are we actually like cultivating within ourselves something that is, multi-tiered, where we're learning different stages of something, and we're committed to this process of implementing it and growing, and um and in doing that, like, why is every bit a part of that process. But that's, from an education standpoint, that's not a part of our process. From a cultural standpoint, that's not a part of our process. From our spiritual um, growth and maturity, that's not really a part of the process. It's we're not taught or given the opportunity to cultivate making the why something that we are wrestling with, playing with, um, growing with.
Or we start to think that if my why is directly related to the goals that I have in
Mm,
relation to what I want to achieve in my life based on what I was told was success as I went
mm.
through the box.
Ah. Mm-hmm.
So I have thinking about, and I give this as an example. It's like there's, if my why is providing for my family, there's nothing wrong with that. There was a family that we knew here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, several years ago, and we knew them personally. So this happens every day, no matter where you live, all across our country. This this guy, this husband, got up in the morning, did everything he normally does, has breakfast with the kids, helps the wife get the kids ready for school, make sure that she's ready to walk out the door to go to work. That day, they just apparently that day they did everything like they normally did, but the kids didn't have school that day. So dad went to work. Mom and the kids went to run some errands. Through the course of their travels, they were killed in a car accident. So if my why is my family, and in an instant that's gone, what
Mm.
happens to me? if my why is gone. So I encourage
Mm,
people when they're thinking about that is pick something that can't be taken from you as
mm,
your why.
mm,
I'm not telling you don't love your family, don't love your job, don't love your kids. I'm not telling you that. But your why needs to be bigger than that.
mm.
Because your why, if your why is something that is impossible for you to achieve or can be taken from you, then why? What is the actual point of any of it? And we don't have those conversations with ourselves or with each other.
Well, we are starting to change the tide there.
We are the exception to the rule. It
And
would be amazing as if we become the rule.
no,
So,
no, no.
and then we have to find another exception. So, but the why that I think that's why people struggle with trying to figure out what their why is. Is it that's they're taught that it needs to be tied to something, and I think maybe even for some it's an internal resistance that just doesn't feel right. Like, but if I make that my why, then what if that happens? And I don't even know if they realize that that is going on inside of them. But I think
Well, it's
for some, it has to be.
so what you're tapping into is a lot of value-based stuff.
Hmm.
And much of our value systems come from other people's perspectives on what our values are supposed to be until or unless we, you know, come into our own concept of our own self that's like, okay, I've played by the rules by other people telling me what I'm supposed to believe about me, about other people, what's supposed to be right and in the way that I'm supposed to do things. And I want to rewrite the code for that.
And you're absolutely correct. As so many people have their why is value based. It's based on what I get if I focus on this as my why. It's not what I give if I focus
Hmm.
this on my why as my why. It's still a transaction based on value that I have assigned to the role
Hmm.
on the other side.
Yeah, very, which is also very outcome results oriented.
Yes, it is. It's all outcome. That's the system.
Hmm.
It's the system is all transactional.
Hmm.
It's transactional and it's performance based on values that have been assigned by others to what they think is supposed to be important to me. It's a huge catch 22.
Hmm.
It's really difficult. We see it every day. We do it every day, even though we don't realize that we're doing it. How many things do I do in my day where there's not an expectation on my part that something is going to happen because of what I'm doing?
Hmm.
That in and of itself is a transaction. I'm expecting something in return based and it's performance based. So based on my performance in this situation, in the role that I have taken in this relationship, I'm expecting something to happen from you because I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing within this transaction based relationship.
Hmm.
Then I did everything you wanted me to do. Why aren't you responding in kind?
Hmm.
Well, now my relationship's going sideways. because I have transaction performance based value assigned to the interaction when really all I'm supposed to do is show up, be kind, and love
Mm-hmm.
and give them space.
Mm-hmm. And let things
So
unfold.
what's that?
And let things unfold.
And let things unfold instead of trying to make them unfold. So don't know where we got off on that tangent, but you said something about values based, and that's what comes up for me when I talk about that. So that's and we do it. I mean, neither one of us, just so our audience understands this, is neither D or I is trying to say we have anything figured out.
I've actually eradicated that from my vocabulary.
What I have, what I tell people now is I can't wait to be wrong next.
That's an easy way to do it.
And if that's, hey, I'm okay being wrong. If more of us were okay being wrong, we wouldn't be stuck in the need to be right.
There'd be a
Just
whole lot more camaraderie.
or would. I posed the question. This is interesting too. I posed the question. I was thinking about this on Saturday, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to put this on LinkedIn. And it was just, yeah, I did a little short post about it, but the question was, when is the last time you were in an argument that wasn't stupid 5 minutes after it was over?
Yeah. I just want to point out that the way you asked that question makes a huge difference in how it's received.
And then I put, so that's how I mean, obviously it's written, so I'm not speaking the
Right.
question, but when is the last time you were in an argument that wasn't stupid 5 minutes after it was over, asking for a friend, dot, dot, dot.
Mm,
It's been a while since I've had that much engagement on a LinkedIn post. And I did it on Saturday, so it's been 2 full days, basically.
mm.
So it's really interesting. But those are the kinds of questions that I think about, like, because I'm thinking to myself, no, seriously, why do I need to be right? Because if I need to be right, then I'm arguing with somebody. When's the last time that an argument wasn't stupid when it was once it was over? Who gains? If nobody gained, it was stupid. So it's interesting because we do this to, and I ask this kind of rhetorically even, but I mean, in all, I cannot think of the last time I was in an argument that wasn't stupid 5 minutes after it was over.
That requires some pretty, at least for me, pretty in-depth and intentional reflection.
I haven't had anybody disagree yet. A couple people said, yeah, well, 100% of the time, it's so like, okay, this is over. Why did I need to win? And I don't feel like I won, even if I did. I don't feel like I did. Once the emotional temperature drops,
Mm.
and I'm now my nervous system is not in override, and I say, okay, what really just happened?
Well, I think this points back to curiosity, what we began our conversation with.
Hmm.
Being curious, being intentionally curious about ourselves and about others, and removing expectations and outcomes from it.
that's so I have I think we've talked about this before too, my three rules for effective relationships. And number two is what you just said, is remove myself from the process. Says if I go in with an agenda, then it's not about the other person, it's about me.
Mm,
If I go in with an expectation of what how I want it to end up, it's about me.
hmm.
And if I'm making it about me, it's because I want to win or I want to be right. If I don't have any expectations and I don't need to win, then there's no reason to argue. None. And the other person can be upset because they want to argue and you don't, but that's not your problem.
I think we just solved world peace. Congratulations.
So then that brings up, that's my hashtag, not my
Hmm.
problem.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Anyway, well, we are past the hour mark again, my friend.
So if somebody wanted to disagree with you, Ray, how could they do that?
They can do it however they want to. But if they want to disagree with me, I would love for them to disagree with me because without feedback that is not considered quote unquote positive, I can't grow. So
I was more asking like how could they contact you to say, "Hey,
I know.
Ray, in all honesty, you're wrong, and here's why."
Perfect. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. Send me a direct message. Don't do a post and
Hmm.
and tag me in the post about why I'm wrong. Let's have the conversation first. Email me, Ray at RU Untapped. That's AREYOU Untapped.com. And if you want to have a phone conversation, we'll set up a phone call. If you want to have a Zoom conversation, we'll set up a Zoom call. But let's talk about it. It's just a different perspective. I'm okay listening to other people's perspectives.
He sits here and listens to mine, so he'll listen to yours too.
And it's just another perspective. It's not it's not a matter of right or wrong. So to me it's pretty simple. Simple as that. So
Sounds good.
if someone wanted to reach out to you and ask you for pointers on how to challenge me, what would you do? What would you say?
Ooh. I would say start with curiosity. That curiosity is probably one of your love languages. And also, I think that curiosity is most people's love languages. They just don't know it.
Just don't know it. Yeah, it's been buried. So
Hijacked. Yeah.
hijacked. Whew. Are we signing off?
I think so.
Until next time, we need a good sign off. We haven't come up with a good sign off yet.
Well, here's the sign. We're off.
Here's your sign.
There we go. Here's your sign.